Okay, meeting is being recorded. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. This is one of our weekly scheduled and set up kind of as a preliminary training series for National Discipline Leads for our new conservation practice documents software. This week we're going to be talking about the documentation file, and we'll also be hitting some common problems that we're running across right now in terms of some things that we need folks to pay some attention to. These sessions are recorded, and when I get the recording, I'll add them back to the calendar item. Later on, I'll see about getting those downloaded, and maybe we'll add them into the actual tool. I haven't figured out how to do that yet, so I'll stay tuned, and I'll see about getting that done eventually. But I can get the direct link now, and I can put that in the calendar item. This week we have Giulio Ferruzzi, who's going to be providing an update or giving a presentation today. Giulio has been doing this. The agronomists are out in front of everybody else in terms of their use of the tool. They're further along, and so I asked him if he would provide this for us because he knows it better than I do. He was actually one of the folks that worked up and put this part of the tool together. So thank you, Giulio, for being willing to come in and share that with us today. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Giulio and let him get started.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And since it's a small group today, if you have any questions, just stop me as they come along, and that way we can get your questions answered. As part of the new system, this Quark system, and our policy in regards to how our process of editing and reviewing our conservation practice standards occur, we need to document the process. And what the consensus has been is to document that the changes during the process in a separate file called the documentation of changes file. Here we see the national revision workflow of the conservation practice standard document. We begin with a pre-QAT draft. It goes through QAT review. Then it goes through an internal review. That's the 30-day or 45-day review, looks like. And then once that's done, if the changes are significant, it may need to go through another internal review, up to 3 total. Goes through QAT review after that is completed, then goes through Federal Register posting, and there's an optional 3rd QAT review after that, and then a release to the NHCP. Every one of these stops.
This is Debbie. Can I ask real quick, what kicks off that optional QAT review?
So,
I mean,
really, it depends. After the Federal Register posting, there's times when it doesn't change. So, like several of my standards from this last Federal Register posting, I got no comments, and there was going to be no changes. So there's no sense me sending it back to you. This time around, for the first time around, I'll probably still send them to you because it's new in the system, and I'll want you to look and make sure I got the 508 stuff in line. But in the future, if it's already gone to you in the system and there's no changes, there won't be a need to send it back to you again after the Federal Register posting because there was no change.
Well, let me ask you this. Right now, there's some sitting waiting Federal Register posting that have the Federal Register heading on it. Are those supposed to be gone? And look, if these are questions I need to talk offline, that's fine. But as I finally, have gotten into as I'm getting more and more of the documents, I'm beginning to see more things that are concerning as far as that final document that actually gets back out there.
So some of those are there's a current set that went to the Federal Register, and what I'm going to do with that set is skip them past internal review and skip them past the point of the Federal Register, and then this optional review with you, send them through that optional review with you. But I know that one of them that says ready for the Federal Register is actually one that went to the Federal Register. We did that outside this system, and so it's kind of it's an artifact of the fact that, this first set of standards that's going through, we're kind of picking them up 3/4 of the way through the process and trying to shove them into the tool to get them across the final line. So that's some of what you're seeing, Debbie.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So at this point, you can see this process is pretty involved, and you're handing the document from one person to another. As you can see, the underneath each draft title, you see which roles are involved. And so in this case, at the beginning, there's the ADM, the NDL, the NTL, and the IRDT. These are all roles and different groups of people. And so you're handing one document through this entire process. This is great. This is a great picture, a big picture of what the process is like for the document. We have another wrong button. My apologies. We have another document that I prefer. This is part of a PowerPoint presentation that's actually linked with a lot of helps. And it's this particular page that I like for everyone to view. And this is essentially the same flowchart that you saw earlier, but instead of following the document, we follow the roles. And so here we see the ADM initiates the process. The NDL has some specific roles in creating that first document. And then the NTL in this light blue color, and so here are the roles at the bottom, tells you what the NTL is required to do, and also part of the IRDT, the Interdisciplinary Review and Development Team, that reviews the standard. And then you can follow this whole process, and so this chart is really helpful if you're QAT and you receive something that's ready for QAT initial draft versus receiving something that's ready for QAT internal review complete, you'll know where you are on the process. So this is a little bit helpful in terms of exactly what you as an NDL or you as an NTL need to do. So this is a little bit better picture of that. As part of that, you can still see that there's a lot of people touching that document along the way, and we need to document those changes. The current policy states that we need to document all the changes that are made during the entire process. This is the Quark system. You've seen how to log in previous webinars, so I'm not going to show you that here. But what I will show you is how we create that file that shows how the changes are documented during the process. So I'm going to show you how to create the documentation of changes file first. In particular practice, 333, the agronomist will be working on this next year. But to just show you how this file would be created, once the standard is created and you have the components for that standard, then that's the time when you create the documentation of changes file. Prior to working with the IRDT, you start with the documentation of changes file. So this is something, creating the documentation of changes file is probably the very first thing that the National NTL will do once you have the standard and components created. And to do that, we go to the New button, Create Revision of an Existing Document, and click on Documentation File. The documentation file is a template, so we click on Templates, and there it is, Documentation File. And so this is the one that we want. I want to click OK. And this is what the documentation of changes file looks like when you create it. And you can see that it is ready for you to edit as you've seen in previous documents. And so this is 333 NHCP, and it's pre-populated with this documentation of changes. It's a relatively long name. And what some of us on the team have discussed is that we should shorten this, like many of our other abbreviated files, to DOCH. And then the standard is amending. And I want you to notice that as I edit this header, the actual section changes up here along with it. And just to make sure that I'm doing this correctly, I'm going to go back here and make sure that I've got everything written exactly like, yeah, amending soil properties with gypsum products. All right. And I think the year, well, we'll do 2015 since this is the 2015 folder. Once you've named that, then the very next thing that you're going to want to do is fill in all this information up here. So who is the IRDT team member? Who is the NDL? So et cetera, et cetera. If another documentation of changes file exists, you could reference that here. Once you're completely done, you can come back and fill in these changes from previous versions and brief development history if you want. The changes from previous versions can be what you create your long and short summary from before pushing this to Federal Register. And there's some instructions here, rationale for criteria change, rationale for each changes to consideration section. I recommend reading through this before you begin working in the standard. Once you've done that, the very next thing you're going to do is, as you see here, the definition, the purpose, and all these components are blank. And since you saw that those components already existed, what we're going to want to do is go through here and replace each one of these components that are here with the ones from the standard that's already there. So you may have to drill into it. So we're working with, in this particular case, with Conservation Practice Standard 333, amending soil properties with gypsum products. So once I scroll into or drill into that location, there's a definition that I want to use. And so I highlight that and I click OK. And that should have replaced it. Not sure why it's blank. Let me, hitting the wrong button. Oh, because this is blank. That's funny. Huh. Okay, well this won't be as instructive as I had imagined. So now this definition is straight from the standard, and unfortunately the standard that I selected for this demonstration is a blank standard. But what you're going to want to do is replace all of these from server. So we'll go back for each one of these into the standard that we're working on, in this case 333. In the 2015 folder, there's a purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And I would do this for each component. And in the criteria, once you bring those in, there might be additional criteria. Make sure that all the additional criteria are brought in and considerations. And if you have separate considerations, so if there's different sections in the consideration section, make sure that all of these are brought in. Once they're all brought in, the next thing that you want to do is you want to add the comment section behind each or under each component. So I'll just do that for these two right now to demonstrate, but you'll want to complete this for every component. So every component is going to have a comment section after it. And once you're done, then you will select this option up here, Save and Close. And so here we see 333 NHCP DOCH, amending soil properties with gypsum products. It's been truncated because the name is long. Make sure that you save it in the right location, so you'll have to drill in to where the 333 is located, so ESD Agronomy. (2015) folder. Document type is documentation file. Status is draft. This is a national practice supporting document. I would recommend routing this to no one. And then typing in practice code and the standard name. And I believe we get rid of these underscores. Is that correct, Bill? In the display
I
name?
do. I usually do.
Yeah.
I don't know that it really is going to matter for this particular file type, but
Right.
um,
Yeah. That's the other thing, is that this particular file type does not go anywhere. It doesn't get published anywhere. So we have a little bit of a leeway in what we do here. Okay, so once that's set up, we hit save. And when we go back to Cork, here is that file that I just created, 333 NHCP DOCH amending soil properties. Any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, Julio, so would we set up a new file, say, for finalizing internal comments, and then when we finalize any Federal Register updates or comments, does it get a new file for each of those?
No, and you're actually about like 3 seconds ahead of me, because that was exactly where I was going to go next. Is once that's done, then well, maybe you're about like 15 minutes ahead of me, actually, because what I was going to show you is right now the agronomists are working on this 327 conservation cover as one of them. So I'm going to open up the documentation of changes file, and to do that I have to check it out. And so here is the documentation of changes file. The header is being filled out partially. And as you can see, here is my definition for the practice. And here is the comment that we deliberated on. No changes. So we just wrote no changes in the comment section. This is the IRDT team. So this is the first cut before it goes to internal review. Okay? So here is the purpose section, and we did make some changes in the purpose section. What I normally do when I'm working with standards is once this comes in to the documentation of changes file, I come down to the comment section and I write changed from, if we're going to make any changes in the team. And then I copy this whole section and I paste it. And then I write change to, or in this case I just wrote to. And then after we make any changes here, then I copy this and paste it down here. So this is what the purpose section looked like before we tweaked it. And this is what it looks like now. And what you're probably thinking is, well, why do you have to do that if you already have the final up here? Well, one of the reasons is because this is going to go through the internal review compositor, and they're going to have their comments. And so this is just the beginning phase of documentation. So the comment section is where I like to document the old standard, what it came in as, and what we changed it to in the first cut. And so each of these sections for 327, you'll see is like that. Now, what you'll notice is in this section, before I move on, in the purpose section, you'll see that water here is highlighted. And when you hover over it, you see that this is Debbie's doing. And what this tells you is that not only has this standard gone through the first cut, the pre-QAT internal review, but it has already gone through the first quality assurance team review. So Debbie has made changes to the component, proposed changes, and now it has come back to me as the NTL to then decide whether or not I want to accept these. So if I wanted to accept Deborah's comment here on deleting the colon and putting in the M dash, then I would come up to purpose, and I would click edit, and then I would highlight this, click review, and then click accept change. Or is it getting rid of the M dash and using the colon, whichever looks like that's what.
Yeah, it is. It's right now. This is Debbie. I'm sorry. It's incorrect in the template right now. When Dustin put it in, and we just didn't catch it. And it's supposed to be a colon, unless it ends up making it a complete sentence. There is a rhyme or reason. And one other thing, just so y'all know, groundwater run together is a word that we use in NRCS. Surface water is 2 words. So there's a reason why. I know it's silly, but I got to follow the rules. So there is a difference between doesn't make any sense to me, but there is a difference between groundwater and surface water. One is 1 word, the other is separated into 2 words. So, I don't make this stuff up.
Yeah, and well, you know, it's English. There's more exceptions to the rules than there are rules, so we'll just live with it.
It is, isn't it?
But so okay, I'm going to accept Debbie's change here, and then so now you see already that what we had changed it to in the IRDT team discussion is a little bit different than what you see here, and that's why I copy and paste the original that came in, and then copy and paste the first cut, because things will change over time, and we'll get to Timmy's comment about, okay, well, what about the IRC and what about the Federal Register? And I'll show you how we document those changes. Once I'm done, I'd come in here and I'd say save and close. Now, when I do that, not only did I change this component here, but if I were to go into the standard document would also have changed. So these are linked, and that's why you never really have to touch the standard unless it is to move the standard up that chain, that flow chart that I showed you. Both of those flow charts that I showed you at the very beginning is the conservation practice standard that's moving. But all the work that you do will actually be in this document, the documentation of changes. So this particular standard, the only bad thing about the comment section is that it's at the end of each major section. So in this case, the criteria section has a general criteria and 3 additionals, but the comment section is after all of that. And again, to address that, what we do is we say changed from, and then I copied the whole section as is, and then changed to, and then I copied what we did. So I'm going to save and close this for now, and I'll show you what happens when we're further on down the process of what about something that has gone through internal review. So the 328 is a good example of that. So here's the documentation of changes file. So I'm going to check this out. And this one is ready. This one is awaiting Federal Register review right now, waiting to be posted to the Federal Register for review. And so here are what you can do in Quark is you can create these tables. And what the agronomists have agreed to is this format right here. We have a heading in the table. The first column is the author of the comment. The second column is the comment received. The third comment is the location of the comment, which sounds a bit useless until you get to those sections that I was talking about, like the criteria section and the consideration section, where you can't actually address the comment exactly where you see it, so you have to be able to reference where it is. And then the action taken and the justification. So as part of the national policy on conservation practice standard writing, we have to show that we received the comment and we need to make a change or not make a change and justify why we did that. And this is not for necessarily every single comment, but for the most important ones. However, as the agronomy team has done, is we typically go through every comment. In some cases, like we see here, this, several comments about hyphenation and spacing issues created from the conversion of a PDF document to a Word document. I didn't make every single one of those comments stick where exactly it is, but I put the general comment up here and said, set, let it stand. All formatting is done by the Quark software and by the QAT team. So we, the IRDT team is not going to address this, but we'll let the QAT team fix that. Okay. So let's look at the definition section as an example. So we received one comment in the definition section, and they proposed an alternative definition. So the location of the comment was in the first and only sentence in the section. You can see here, here's our definition. Here's what it was before. Here's what we changed it to. And as you can see, there was just minor changes, replaced ground with location and on with in. They had proposed a different comment. We said no, stat. We're leaving it as is. The addition of over several years can be problematic, and we explained why we left it as it is. And so this is the role of the National Technical Lead, to compile all the comments into this document. And what you'll get, let me go back to the Quark system. What we'll get, and here is the IRC comments that came in from the 328. Here are all the files that I received. And so I took all these and went through them each one by one, brought them in, and looked at where the comments were made, and I took all the comments that were significant and singled them out. So all these comments that you see in this document, or any of these documents, are in the, so all these are all logged into the documentation of changes file. So if Oregon wanted to know how we responded to their comment, this general comment, then they would be able to go into the documentation of changes file. And I think those are general comments, so I can't remember here. So this was Oregon's comment up there that we saw in that document. We say, we address this in the O&M section. And their question was, no inclusion of substitute crops. So that's there. And as you noticed, Oregon had two comments, and so we can see here one of their comments was about the spacing and hyphenation issue. So this document has gone through IRC review and is waiting for Federal Register review. I'm going to close this document. I'm going to go to an older practice that actually has gone through the Federal Register process. And so here's the documentation of changes. And what you'll notice is that these older documentation of changes that we agronomists did are actually called documentation of change. Since then, we've decided to standardize, much like what you see here. Here's the Conservation Practice Standard. It's shortened to CPS. We've agreed to shorten this to DOCH, and that decision is being processed as we speak, just so that we don't get different names here, like documentation file, changes file, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to check this out so that we can take a look at it. And this gets to your question, Timmy, of, well, what about if you get, different, what if we had, IRC comments on draft 1? What if we had a draft 2 or a draft 3? We would create a new table. IRC comments on draft 2 would be a separate table. IRC comments on draft 3 would be a separate table. And whatever we do here is reflected in the component. So let's take a look at, here we go. This section is the purpose section. So in this purpose section, here was the comments converted from to the proposed format. And as you can see here, we had some M dashes with the soil resource concern at the bottom or at the end of each line, which in the end result was removed. So our first cut was to change it from very confusing to somewhat confusing, and we ended up with a bit clearer but more cloudy in terms of RCs. So here's our IRC comments on draft 1. We received several. And then here is the Federal Register comment. So here's a new table: author, comment received, location of the comment, and action taken. So here's a comment from NSAC, and they wanted us to add additional purpose of providing habitat for weed seed predators and natural enemies of crop pests. This is for mulching. They wanted that as a primary purpose. And our action taken was STET. Remember, that means let it stand. And the recommended purpose would be more to address wildlife habitat, which does not meet the intent of this practice. We're not mulching for habitat. That's not the primary purpose of mulching. It can be it can certainly be an advantage, but it's not the primary purpose. And one of the things that we try and do is to only include primary purposes. So the other thing I wanted to show you is this location of comment section column here. This is why it's important, because in the purposes I can just refer to this comment from Virginia is for the first purpose. This one's for the second purpose. This is for the third purpose. And so you can easily, without having to scroll up and down the screen, you can know which purpose it's for. So here we are. Maine had a comment for the 7th purpose. Virginia had a comment for the 7th purpose. California had a comment for the 8th purpose. What did we do about it? So we can track all of this in these tables. Now, creating a table in Quark is relatively simple. All you have to do is go to the section, comment section, go to Insert, and here's Insert a Table. And by doing that, you can set how many columns and rows. So I recommend the 4-column format. We've kind of kicked around with the agronomist all the things that we would like to, how we want to document everything, and the 4-column format seems to be reasonable. Number of rows. You want a header row. And I always recommend putting in the caption. So like, for example, IRC comments on draft 1. The description would be at the bottom if you put one in. And there you go. Now you've created the table. The unfortunate thing is that in Quark, any edits to the table is a cell-by-cell comment. So I would have to cell and then paste it here. Copy this cell, paste it here. Copy this cell, paste it here. Copy this cell, and paste it here. That's the unfortunate thing.
Copy table isn't an option. This is Debbie again. Copy table isn't an option at that point if you want.
It is not. It is not.
Okay.
No, it is. Yeah, it's not. However,
I've just never tried. I didn't know if it was an option in there or not.
Not in here. So, you know, I mean, you could copy this. Here's what I've done in the past that I really liked, and I've ran into this because I lost connectivity at some point and was not able to save my documentation of changes file after having put in a bunch of information. So I copied the entire thing, put it in Word, finished the table, and then I copied the entire table from Word, pasted it into Quark, and then deleted the partially finished one. So you can then, you know, and that, I know that Peter Robinson is creating a macro that is designed to take a whole slew of Word documents that are the same. So in this case, you could get all the changes and everything, and it'll create two tables. It'll create a table of comments and a table of edits. And from that, you could then copy and paste into here once you organize the table into this 4-column format. So you can then copy the table in Word and then come in here and then just hit Control V. So Control C in your Word document and then Control V and then paste your table. And then all you'd have to do is right-click on the table, and then it'll give you the option. So let's see. So you can see here, once I'm on the table, I right-click and it says Insert Caption and Insert Description. So you can then edit that table that you just imported and put in a caption or a description. Just to show you, if you put in description, it comes at it pops up here at the bottom of the table. So that, in a nutshell, is how we create a documentation of changes file and why we as agronomists have really kind of boiled down this process into sort of, you know, you copy your current stuff, original version, you copy down what you changed it to, and then as the IRC comments come in, we put those in a table so we can track who submitted them and what we did. So any state that wants to know whether or not we actually addressed their comments, they don't need to go back into the Quark system and look at the Word document that they submitted. All the states will just need to open up the documentation of changes file, and they just need to drill into one of these tables and see what we did and what we didn't do and why we didn't do it. So in this case, you see we had some comments and we said, agreed, yeah, we should do that. Done. Agreed, done. You know, delete this. Agreed, deleted. You know, here's a comment from Virginia rewording it, and we said, no, we preferred Ohio's rewording over Virginia's, and so we said, no, we used Ohio's recommendation instead. So we try and be as specific as possible in the documentation of changes file as to what we do and why. And so here's another set of Federal Register comments.
So, Julio, I got a question about the Federal Register comments. Let's say the Fertilizer Institute sends a letter. How are we going to keep the letter?
Well, I would think that the best way to do that would be back here, where we have, you know, a folder called IRC comments. We really need another folder that says Federal Register comments, and then we just stick the letter in there.
Okay.
We did not do that with 484, but I think, you know, and this was early on, this was 2017, but I think that's really the best way to do it. IRC comment, one IRC comment folder, regardless of how many versions, how many drafts we have, because if you look at this, one of the great things that we have here is created date, and so we can see that, you know, even though we may have multiple comments from Virginia, they'll have different dates, so we can track which one is draft 1, draft 2, or draft 3. And this also says in the name, draft November 1st, 2016. So one folder for IRC comments and one folder for Federal Register comments is what I would recommend. And that's, I think I've talked too much as it is, so any questions? Man, I put everyone to sleep.
Well, I will say that it is, I think the usefulness of this will really come into play, you know, that the next time around, you can go back and look at the documentation folder for the previous revision and say, you know, we talked about this last time, and we didn't accept it then. Do we really want to rehash this and accept it now? And I think that's some of what happens is we get a little bouncing back and forth with our comments. Is, you know, change it one way this round and then change it back the next round because, you know, some state didn't like it and commented, and just a function of how our commenting system works.
Did you want to talk a little bit about those formatting issues?
Yeah, let's talk about that for just a few minutes. So some things for folks to know. Could you pull up a standard for us, Julia, since you're in the system?
Yep. Should you want me to pull up the contour buffer strips? That's the one I think that had the issues.
Okay, that's fine.
You're talking about the formatting issues, right, Debbie?
Yeah, that's what.
Yes, I think that's the most recent one that I sent back for update.
We'll pick on the agronomist.
Thank you for your willingness. If we go down to criteria, of course, where the problem starts.
So in the new system, the way that we have this set up is we have to use certain headings for certain sections. And the SMART document is set up to create those headings for us. And when we use that system to create the headings for us, it also creates some 508 compliance stuff for us that helps in the final document. When the system creates the final document, it puts those tags in there for us. But in order for us to do that, we actually have to have and use the headings. In this example here, the agronomists have done the section like we've always done, and that is you just create a bolded piece in front of your section, and that's your heading. In the new system, if we want to have a heading for a section, we need to use the add a heading section over here. And I covered this kind of extensively. If you go to week 3 and go into that presentation and go to about the 40-minute mark. If you go into the week 3 and go to the 40-minute mark, I actually walk through an example of how to create a heading and how to cut and paste a heading from, you know, one of our traditional Word documents into this system.
Shall we demo it here?
Yeah, go ahead. Do you know how to demo it, Julio?
Well, I'm gonna try. Let's see.
Here's what I would do, Julio, is I would go to that row and grade, and I would copy all the way down to the next blue section. Yeah, copy everything all the way down. Go all the way down. Capture several sections.
Everything. Okay.
Yeah. Go all the way down. And then I would hit Control X.
Oh, cut it. Okay.
Yeah, cut Control X. Now I will go to the end of the previous section there, right behind Reestablished. Yeah, right there, and click on Add Heading 3 on the left in the left-hand column. Add Heading 3. And go into where it says Heading 3 Body. Highlight that. And then Control V. And then I would take that row grade and I would replace, I would just type in there, row grade, yeah, and then delete it below.
It's sentence case, so it's going to be lowercase on grade. Just accurate, yeah, so you know.
Oh, grade is lowercase?
Yes, it's the sentence case is what we put for heading 3s and 4s.
So now you've got the section in there, and you'd redo that for each one of those headings to get them into the heading level 3. So it would take you a bit of time, and I would probably turn off.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now. I hate the tracking changes thing.
The tracking.
Yeah.
Good deal.
And this is the other thing is the bullets, you have to actually turn them off. You can't delete those, so you gotta.
Actually, you can at that point. Okay. If you just back up, if you backspace, it does delete.
Yep.
And it is necessary because it'll show up.
So then I just add another heading and then do the same thing with the width of strips and another heading, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then just repeat the process, exactly.
Yep.
And you can go to a level 4 heading. There are a few of our standards that you would actually go into another level below that. So there is that capability, but that's as low as we go is heading 4. And then there's also, the additional criteria 4 sections. Those are also separate, but I think you've got those already made in different components.
Yeah, the additional criteria, you mean?
Yeah, scroll down. Let's see.
Yeah, additional criteria are separate components.
Yeah, you've already made them into different components, which is fine. But it looks like you need to do the same thing in those sections.
Yep. Yep, I'll do that. What about this, though? I think we can just get rid of it here. Probably we should just get rid of the word general, since it's general considerations.
Yeah, you could. Yep, I wouldn't put the heading there.
Yeah. All right, I'll clean this one up. I'll work with Steve Bacher, make sure that we get all this done the same way for all our agronomy. And I think these are the practices that are in for Federal Register review, if I remember correctly.
These just came off of Federal Register review or ready to go to Federal Register review?
I think they came to me as initial. I think this one is sitting in mine as an initial review.
Oh, is it? Okay, all right.
I'm not mistaken. I'll have to go back and look. I would go back and look.
Time.
And I'm going to tell you what I did discover now, and they just in the last week or so, I now have option of turning off track changes as the editor, which helps considerably because before you had all this, it would come back to you where I had cut and pasted and everything was showing up. I would definitely recommend turning off for y'all. If I send it back to you to correct it, then turn off the track changes to correct these. But I'm going to be honest with you. I would do it, and of course I'm a little anal on making sure everything's in there right. I would do each heading one at a time, just because it's going to throw it to the bottom of that section. So you would do like what you've done now. You've already done row grade. I would go back and what I do is I copy, like with the strips, I would copy that and then do add a heading. When you hit add heading, of course, it's going to throw it at the bottom. Now, I wouldn't do the whole thing. That's up to you, but you've already got that information there. But if you go ahead and do add heading 3.
Wait, let me copy. So, add heading 3.
I'm just going to put you back up. Now, if this is what I do, and you could just go ahead. Now, you're gonna cut and paste. You're okay there. You're gonna cut, yes, yes. Very good.
Let me just get it kind of the way that it needs.
It just gets a routine. You get a routine going, and what you're doing now is, and there would be, by the way, an M dash at the end of this minimum width will be, because that begins what will end up being a total sentence with your bullet. Just
M
so you know.
dash. Let's see. What's the?
And that's up in insert. That's up in insert up above, and then you would, or you can do the. I don't think the control alt dash works. I think it has to be this time.
I think, is that the M dash
Oh,
right
up,
there?
up, one line, up, and right there. Yes.
There it is.
It's
all right.
pain in the rear because there is no, unfortunately, there is no keyboard shortcut with this. But anyway.
All right. Then I'll
so each person, you just find, and I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't realize y'all were going to have to do the cutting and pasting and sending it back to y'all. But we need to stop it because once it gets to me, that adds, for this whole document, that adds considerable time to get it all done. So that's kind of why I'm at this point. So
no worries. I'll take care of it.
Thank you for addressing that. Thank you. Thank you.
And then if I were done at that point, then as you guys know, you just right-click here, save and close. And then whatever changes I just made here would show up in the standard. So if we go...
I think are you in the document or are you in the standard?
I was in documentation of changes file. And so here, so if we go to the standard, oops, wait, or gosh, I don't know where I was at. What? Let's see, where was I? I can't. Did I check out the standard? I may have checked out the standard.
Yeah, you checked out the standard.
I checked out the standard, yeah. Normally we don't work in the standard. We do all the work in documentation of changes, but
so when I send it back to you like we did, or like where it's sitting right now, then you would actually be in the standard, correct, when you made the changes versus the documentation?
No, we don't work in the standard. We just do all the changes in documentation of changes file because...
right. Well, then Bill, how is it going to get back to me?
Oh, it's, well...
for the review.
Yeah, you get the standard. What I do is I make all the changes in the documentation of changes file, but I forward the standard. So you get the standard.
And it updates in the standard before I get it, and when it comes back
Correct.
to me, it's updated.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
You probably still want to open up the standard and look,
yes.
because you want to make sure you got the spacings right and look for those kind of things.
Yes.
In the standard.
Right. Okay. And that does look good because your row grade is good. That heading.
Yeah, I just want to refresh it, make sure. And so let's see, we got row grade right there.
Because it dropped it to the next line. Remember, for 508, we had to put it to the second line. Exactly. The next one under it is the old way, so as you can see, that's good change. Right.
Yeah.
And your width of script is correct.
So I'll go ahead and make all those changes sometime this week, and so this one I'll push this one over to Steve Bacher to move forward.
Okay.
Hey, I have a quick question. I think this is Terry. If you were making those changes in the documentation file, would you have that same opportunity to grab that heading 3 and heading 4 in the documentation file as you have in the standard?
Yes, and I'll show you that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So, save. So I'm going to go and check this one out. Here's a documentation of changes file, and this is where I prefer to make those changes. So here's that section that we were just working on. Criteria. And I was working on the general criteria, so I want to edit that. And so then here we could do that same thing that we just saw. I'm just going to get bold and hit Control X. And then click this icon, add heading 3, Control V, and let's see.
I don't know if y'all have noticed, but Quark doesn't grab and let you highlight nearly as quickly and easily as Word does.
I know. Okay.
It doesn't do a lot of things as quickly and easily
It doesn't do a lot of things that Word does. You're right.
but it does put it into the right format.
Yeah. So I just made another change.
Very well.
That. And if we were to go back into, I'd have to save that, but maybe I should just do that real quick. Let me see if I can just go ahead and finish this whole section off. If you guys bear with me here, Control X.
Now you do know there's also a cut and paste option up in Insert, right?
Yes, I know.
Okay, all right.
It's easier to...
It's what everybody gets comfortable with. I know that.
Exactly. I could spell. Notice how your spelling skills seem to deteriorate when other people are watching you?
Amen. Amen.
So...
That's very well. There's an...
All right. I think this is kind of, if I remember correctly, this was exactly the arrangement that we had in the original one. So now that I'm done with this, I would right-click, save and close. So now we can see row grade, width of strips, arrangement of strips, and vegetation. I'm going to save and close this documentation of changes file. And I'm just going to say all right, save. And then if we were to look at the standard and preview, let's see if we refresh this fiddle.
You can re-index. Right-click on the pink box there. Right-click, and then come down where it says index again.
There we go. All right. So there's the standard on the right side. Let me just make this a little bit bigger so you can see. So here's the row grade, the width of strips, the arrangement of the strips, and the vegetation all done. And this is the standard that we're looking at. So.
Yay. Looks good.
So technically, as editors of the standard, we never really actually have to touch the standard. The only time I would actually go into the standard to move it along is to move it along. So I would check out the standard, and let's say that, you know, now that we receive this back from the QAT team, I make the changes, and let's say I'm ready to move this along. I would go to save and close, at this point and move it on to
Wow. Okay. Right.
ready for QAT. Actually, this should have already been ready for QAT. I don't know why.
Bill sent it back to you. Bill, isn't this the one that you sent back to him? Yeah, so he had to knock it out. I can't do it. I can't send it back to you. All I could do is just leave it in QAT review, and then you're not going to be able to get it. So Bill sent it back to you as admin. I couldn't do it. So that's why that one was back. And I haven't made any other changes, so I'll start. Once I get this back from you, I'll make all the any other small edits that might need to be.
So I'm just going to route
it's
it
not
to
done
for right now until we're done
right.
with it. But I would, if this was, since this is...
Oh, I wouldn't leave it there. I wouldn't, no. I wouldn't leave it there. You still got more work to do on it? Because don't you have that next section down?
If
you do that, yeah, that's going to put it out of your hands.
Yeah, it's not routing to anyone. So.
But it'll go, you're going to change the status. Go back up, go right there. You got to leave it in pre-QAT draft because you've got other changes to make on headings down in, where is it, considerations, one of the other sections, wasn't it?
Yes, but until I route it to you, it won't go anywhere.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what this is. It matters.
All righty. Okay.
If it routed to you, then yeah, I couldn't get it anymore. But if I route it to no one, it wouldn't really go anywhere. But yeah, so that's how you move. That's how you move the document. Is basically what I wanted to show. So okay, I'm going to take my name off of that and hit.
Any other questions? We're kind of at the end of our hour.
This has helped me to see what y'all are doing before it even gets to the QAT. I can tell you that. This helps me a good bit. I'll go back and review the first two that are recorded so that I can kind of catch up.
Do you want me to invite you to the rest of them? I don't mind.
Yeah, if you don't mind, because this is that, Bill, I believe next week. I go to another deputy area next week, and I really don't have I have no idea what I'm going to be editing in there. So until then, I'm going to press ahead and continue to work on this as always. So yes, please do.
Okay, I'll do that. All right, thanks everyone. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.